Cicero tells us that the request was an impudent one, but he yielded to it. He even prevented the Salaminians from depositing their money in a temple and so stopping the heaping up of interest. He said he did this out of regard for Brutus, and thus, so far as the great orator was involved, the case ended. No doubt that noble young Stoic Brutus felt that his older friend had been decidedly unfriendly in not awarding the full 48%. Cicero, however, prided himself on the way he disposed of the case. As Fowler, one of Cicero's most lenient biographers, remarks, if one of the most upright of Roman governors could allow himself thus to trifle with equity, what may not be believed of the conduct of others? For if they do these things in a green tree, what shall be done in the dry? The negociatores were ubiquitous. They were the Phoenicians of the 1st century BC. In Africa, they formed large and prosperous colonies. All Gaul, says Cicero in his speech for Fonteius, is full of traitors, Roman citizens. No Gaul does any business without a Roman's aid. He avows that he does not declare this rashly, though we must never forget that it is an orator and not a statesman. Who is talking. They were in Egypt long before Augustus's conquest. Witness that case of Gaius Rabirius Postumus, a rich moneylender who in 55 BC believed he had grasped all the revenues of the Lagidae, thanks to the loans he had advanced Ptolemaeus XI, who to collect his fortune became Diocetes, chief treasurer of Egypt, and whose extortions finally were so terrible that Ptolemaeus cast him into prison, lest the people revolt, and who with some difficulty escaped, stripped to Rome, where a lawsuit and banishment awaited him. And Asia Minor, with its rich and defenseless industrial cities, was as fair a prey for the moneylenders as for the Publicani. Lucullus, an honorable exception among proconsuls of Asia, tried to stand out against their rapacity. He found parents selling their children, cities their art treasures, and ancestral gods. Individuals, says Plutarch, were so tortured and beset by the Roman creditors that the very slavery they fell into was a relief. The province was groaning under the effect of Sulla's war, fine of 20,000 talents. To pay this sum, the provincials had turned in despair to the Roman lenders. In a few years, usury and sheer outrage had swollen the alleged debt to 120,000 talents. Because Lucullus struck off their worst demands and arranged for a fair settlement, the negociatores never forgave him, and by their money's help, says Plutarch, as they were very powerful and had many of the statesmen in their pay, they stirred up several leading men against him. Lucullus was finally recalled, more because he failed to bow to the financial magnates than because he could not end the Pontic War. It is to be hoped that Cicero's fortune was not enlarged by a round fee for that speech, Pro Manilia Lege, which did so much to send Pompeius out to replace the moneylender's enemy. Not every Roman moneylender, any more than every publicanus, was invariably extortionate. Later we shall speak again of the fortune of Atticus, Cicero's friend, and some questionable transactions he engaged in, but at Athens, where he spent so much of his life, he delighted to play the accommodating friend and easy creditor. He loaned the city of Athens money for a long term, and took no interest, and on one occasion he presented every Athenian citizen with 7 medimni of wheat. These, however, are not the acts of a financier, but of a rich benefactor. Other communities that borrowed of Atticus did not find him so obliging. Finally, it should be said that much of the business of the negociatores was, no doubt, quite legitimate. The coming of the empire put an end to most of the peculiar abuses of the republican regime, nor would the misdoings of governors, publicani, and usurers have permanent significance, save for 2 reasons. First, these abuses tended to concentrate the capital of the world at Rome and made possible the vast fortunes and prodigal spending of the later Republic and the early Empire. Second, these extraordinary opportunities for ill-gained and easily gained wealth deepened the lust of the ruling classes for money and their willingness to gouge honor, happiness, love, religion in terms of money. The result, under the early Caesars, was a cult of Mammon, which has no counterpart in history.